Hello, welcome to the video. In this video we're going to be drawing a very simple vector graphic of an owl. To get started I'm going to size my page to the size of the screen. To do this I'm going to press 5 on the keyboard, and I want a guide that I can line things up with on my page. So I'm going to go over to the side, click down on my mouse button and drag in a guide. I'm going to line that roughly central in my page, like so. You can do the same from the top. So you can drag guides down from the top, but we don't need that for the moment, so we'll leave that. For the body of my owl, I'm going to use our ellipse tool. So I'm just going to drag out a nice shape for our owl, like so. Now I want this to snap to our center line. So if we go up on the right hand side of your screen, you've got the different options for snapping. So we're going to enable snapping by clicking on the top button. For this I want the very bottom button down here enabled, which snap guides, and I also want to snap center points. So each section has a button at the top which enables the whole section. So this section's enabled, but we also need to enable snapping to center, like so. So now if we get our selection tool, we can drag over our owl's body and it should snap to the center line like that. Next thing I want to do is I'll draw the eyes, I think, next. So I'm going to click on my ellipse tool. I want to constrain them to circles, so I'm going to hold down Control. Alright, let's turn snapping off for the meantime. So do that. We want to constrain it to be a circle, so what we're going to do is hold down Control and then drag out our eye, like so. At the moment we can't see it because it's the same colour as the background. So we can either go up to the top and get our fill and stroke dialog box and change colours that way. Another quick and easy way of changing colours is down the bottom here. We've got a swatch of colours that you can choose from. You can change the colour of a selected shape just by clicking on one of the colours. So I want this to be white, so I can click on white. You can also change the colour of the stroke. So if you want to change the colour of the stroke of your object, if you hold down the Shift button, you can change the colour of the stroke. So let's just zoom in a bit so we can see. If you want to get no stroke or no colour, you can do the same again. If you scroll to the end of the swatch, there's a cross for none. If you click on that, you can take away the colour. So I actually want some colour there. So for that I'll do that, but I don't want a stroke. So I hold down Shift and I press the cross, and that will get rid of the stroke on my path. So the next thing I want to do is create a circle inside this one. To do that I'm actually going to duplicate the circle I've got already, which we can do by Control D. So if you hold Control down and press D, it duplicates the shape. Let's get the selection tool. We can't actually see any change because it's literally just duplicated it and sat it on top. I want the inside of my eye, on the next part of my eye, to be a lighter brown, so we'll select this one. So now we've changed the colour, we want to scale it to the right size. I want it to stay centralised on the circle that's already there. So what I'm going to do is hold down Shift and Control, and then when I scale it, we can move it in like so to wherever I want it, and then release. I'm going to Control D and duplicate again. This time I'm going to make it black for the iris, sorry, the pupil. I'm then going to go up to my nodes tool. Actually no, we won't, we'll scale it first. So to scale it this time I want to constrain it to a circle, so we just hold down Control. But this time I'm just going to drag it down to get our pupil. I'm then going to go to the nodes tool, click on the nodes tool to get our different handles, and then I'm going to create the appearance of a highlight on the eye, like so. For the other eye, I am just going to duplicate this one. So So let's click off for a sec, and I'm going to drag a box over all 3 circles. I'm going to press Control D, get my selection tool, and then I'm going to drag that 3 across. Actually, if we hold down Control, it'll stay either vertical or horizontal to that eye. So hold down Control, we get it roughly where we want it. Doesn't matter if it's not centralised at the moment. I think they need scaling a bit, really. Let's make them a bit bigger. So we get the nodes tool so we don't drag anything around. And I'll drag a box over all of them. Go to the selection tool, then holding down Control, I'm going to scale our eyes. Make them a lot bigger. I'm then going to click off. I'm going to click onto the white part of the eyes. So what I'm going to do is going to combine these two to create one shape. So if we go up to Paths, Combine, now it's created one shape. These parts, the part of this eye has disappeared because it's brought them together, lined them up, which is unfortunately in front of those two. So if we just take it down a couple of steps, we can bring those back. Now I'm going to group the whole lot. So I'm going to get our nodes tool, I'm going to click off for a minute, and then I'm going to drag a box around all of them. I'm going to group them. Because the white sections are now one shape, if we turn on snapping, get our selection tool and move it across, it should snap to the centre like that. So now we know we've got it nicely centralised. Next step, I'm going to draw Beak. So again, we're going to drag out a lips for our beak. So about that size. I'll make it yellow. We've got snapping enabled, so I'll get my selection tool, I'm going to drag it back to where I want it. I'm going to turn off snapping for the time being. I'm going to duplicate that beak, and I'm going to drag it down here. I'm going to change the colour slightly. We'll make it green for the time being. I do. We'll turn snapping back on. I've got snapping corners enabled, I think. No, I don't. Let's snap corners. So it snaps the corners and the centre points. I'm going to Control D, duplicate again. I'm going to drag it over to this side, snap it back to that side. Now if we take the 2 green ellipses, so we'll hold Shift, select both of them. I'll go up to Paths, Combine. So they're one shape. Then I'm going to hold down Shift, select the beak, and I'm going to go up to Path, down to Difference to cut away the bottom of the beak. What else do we need? We need some wings. I think to create the wings, we click on the main body of our shape. We're going to Control D to duplicate. We'll bring the opacity down slightly so we can see what we're doing. We will actually change the colour a bit. And then holding down Control to constrain the movement to vertical or horizontal, we're going to drag it over. Actually, what I will do, I'll release that so we're not constrained. And I'll put it down to where I think it'll look fairly good. So the section I want is the intersection between the 2 objects. So to cut out that intersection, I need a shape to put on top. So to do that, I'm just going to duplicate the main body again. And I'm going to hold Shift, select the wing object, go to Path, Intersection, and that creates my wing. I want the opacity back up. If we click on it again, we get our rotational centres. We can move the rotational centres. So I want to put this right at that top point. So when I rotate the wing, it rotates around the top tip. Oh, if we get it down, there we go. It rotates around the top tip of the wing. This way, when I rotate it, I can just bring the bottom out. I think that looks pretty good. Now I'm going to duplicate this wing to make a wing for the other side. So if we take that, Control D, we've duplicated the wing. Now what I want to do is take the rotational centre, if we can get hold of it, and then I'm going to move it to the centre point, or to the centre line. The reason I'm doing this is because if I flip it horizontal, it'll flip it around the centre point. Since we've got it lined up on the centre line of our bird, if we now flip horizontal, it pops the wing straight over to the other side where we'd like it to be. I'm going to draw the stomach next, I think, so we're going to use the ellipse tool. We're going to turn off snapping. Use our selection tool, select the belly. We turn on snapping so it snaps centrally. There we go. I think about there would do. Colour wise, we give it a light colour. Now I need to chop the bottom off. Actually, I might move it up very slightly. I need to chop the bottom off of this, so again we're going to need a shape over the top so we can chop the bottom. So I want it to fit neatly with the body of the bird. So I'm selecting the body of the bird. I'm going to press Ctrl D to duplicate it. I'm then going to hold down Shift, select our other ellipse. I'm going to go to Path, Intersection, and that cuts out our stomach to fit nicely. We need to drop it back so it's below the beak, so we can drop it back one. Now it sits below the beak on our drawing. I think we'll draw some ears next. I'll use the rectangle tool to draw ears. So I'm just going to drag out a rectangle. It's very light, so we'll use the next one. That looks nice, nice colour. I'm going to round the corners slightly of our ears. I'm then going to get our selection tool. I'm going to click on it, and I'm going to use these skew tools or skew handles to change the shape. I'm then going to drag it over to where I'd like it to be. We're going to turn off snapping so you don't get the problems with snapping. So I think round about there. If we drop it to the back, sorry, then drop to the back, there we go. We might drag that over a bit. I think that looks good. We click on it to get our rotational handles and a rotation center. We'll stick that over. Oh, moved. Stick that over on the center line. I'm then going to press Ctrl D to duplicate. I'm then going to flip it horizontally to get our other ear, and then I'm going to drop it to the bottom. We also need some feet for our bird, so again I'm going to use the rectangle tool. I'm going to drag a foot on for one side. I'm going to just round these off slightly, like so. We'll change the colour so it looks more foot-like. I'm then going to get my selection tool, click on it to get the rotational centre. I'm going to sit that on the centre line again, if we can find the centre line there. Oh, missed. Let's have another go. There. I'm going to duplicate, so Ctrl D. I'm then going to flip it horizontally to get our second foot. Next step is he needs a branch to sit on. So I'm going to go back to the rectangles tool, and I'm just going to drag out a long rounded rectangle. Let's move that one out a bit more. Like so. We'll make that brown. We'll drop it. If we get our selection tool, we'll drop it down a couple of places so it sits behind the feet but in front of the body. And that's the main construction of our bird done. What I'm going to do is add some gradients just to give it a little bit more depth. So we start with our branch first, linear gradients for the branch. So if we come up here, You can either have flat colour fill, you can have linear gradients, or you can have a radial gradient, and you've got some other options here, but we're just sticking to these three. So we want linear gradient. If we go over to our gradients tool, which is over here on the left hand side, we'll click on that and we get this bar appear. Now this is the path of the gradient, so it changes from brown at this end to transparent at that end. So we can move these stops. So what we're going to do is move one stop to the top, and then we're going to move the other stop to the bottom. But we're going to hold down Control to constrain it to, so we can constrain it to vertical. So now we have our branch with a gradient. What I want it to do is I want it to be dark at the top, dark at the bottom, and lighter in the middle. So we need a third stop. If you notice, as I hover my cursor over the gradient bar, a little plus comes up. So if we double click, we can add an extra stop. To change the colour of a stop, you need to make sure it's highlighted. So at the moment we've got the central one highlighted. So we can now adjust our colours. So we want it to be fully opaque. I want it to be a lighter brown. Like so. We'll lighten that up a bit. And then we move to the the bottom stop. I want that to be darker. Let's go for a darker brown. And I think that will do. Next, we've got our selection tool. I'll select the feet, hold down Shift, select the other one. I'll group those together, group. Then we're going to go up, get our linear gradient tool. We're going to go over to, our linear gradient fill. We're going to go over to our gradient tool. We're going to move the top stop, or one stop to the top, and we're going to move the other stop to the bottom. But again, we're going to hold down Control to constrain it to vertical. I want to have dark at top, dark at the bottom, and light in the middle. So we're going to hover over our bar and double click to get an extra stop. We want that to be fully opaque. So let's start at the top. I'm going to choose, let's go yellow. I'll do the same yellow for the bottom. And then the central one, I'm going to choose the same yellow, but this time I'm just going to come up here and I'm going to reduce the colour to give it a bit of a highlight. So that's linear gradients. For the main body and the beak, actually we use a linear gradient on the belly as well, I think, first. So we select our belly, we choose linear gradient, we're going to get our gradient tool, we're going to put one at the top, and then we're going to drag the other stop down to the bottom. We're going to hold down Control to constrain it vertically, and we just bring it up slightly. There we go, so we've got a subtle gradient on his stomach. We're going to use radial gradients now. So I think next we give the eyes a little bit of depth. So we're going to come up, click on the eyes. Oh, just Control Z to undo the move. I want to give the brown part of the eyes a gradient. So at the moment they're all grouped together. So if we go to the selection tool, we can select just the brown part of the eye. We do one eye and then we just use the same gradient for the other one. So we're going to click on the radial gradient. We're then going to choose the outside stop. We're going to select a colour that we'd like it to be. Perhaps that colour. Make sure the opacity on the alpha channel is right up. Then we're going to go to our centre stop and we're going to lighten it like so. We're then going to click on the other one. We're going to add a radial gradient. and then we're going to use the same gradient. So we've got a selection of gradients that we've already got here. These are the ones we've used already. So if we click on the same one, we can recreate the same gradient on the second eye. We're now going to use a radial gradient to give the beak a bit of depth and the body of the bird a bit of depth. So if we click on the body of the bird, we're going to add a radial gradient. We use the same as the eye. You can also move the center point of the gradient, so we can give it, where we've got drawn our eyes, we've given it the appearance of a highlight on one side. So if we kind of do the same with our gradients, we put the highlighted center off to the right hand side again, like so. We do the same with our beak, so we give it a radial gradient. We click on the outside, we're going to give it a, oh no, that doesn't look right. Let's just move that down somewhere around there, bring that up a bit. So we've got a gradient on our beak. Now what I'm going to do is just move over the center point again. So our highlight moves, we can drag down on our stops. So now we've given our bird a little bit more depth. We quickly do the same with the ears and the wings. So if we click on a wing, we give it a radial gradient. I think we just start with a new gradient. So all we do is take the outside colour, do that a bit lighter, choose the inside, I do that lighter. That looks quite nice. So we'll click on the other wing, radial gradient, and we're going to use the same colour. So we're just going to, or same gradient, sorry. So radial gradient, choose the same one, radial gradient, choose the same one. There we have it. Control 5 to, oh sorry, 5 to centralise our page. What we can do is give it a background. So if we go up to our rectangle tool, we're going to drag a large rectangle over the top of the whole lot. We're then going to drop it to the back. So if we get our selection tool, we can drop it to the bottom. Then we can adjust the colours. So we get a radial gradient. We've got our gradient tool. We click on the outside stop. Take that down a bit to there. Our opacity on the alpha channel needs turning right up to make it opaque. Ooh, that's a bit mustard-like. Let's bring that down a bit. Bring the lightness like that. Then we're going to click on the center stop, and I'm just going to brighten that up like so. The outside colour looks a little bit I think it's too light in the centre now. Anyway, you can play around with yours, get it how you want it. Let's move that down, move that over. But you get the gist. So, got our selection tool, come off, we're going to do control, just zoom in a bit. On the feet, I think I'm just going to give that a stroke just to bring them out. So if you hold down your shift, you can choose the colour of the stroke. So What have we got? Yellow. So if we go for a dark yellow, just to give it a bit of a border, we get rid of our rule. So hold on to our rule and drag it off to the side. And I think that'll do us for this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.